So I'm after Representative.
Yep, and then also Chase
Is after me.
is after you.
Do I introduce him or anything, or we all just introduce ourselves?
I think everybody probably introduce themselves. Just wanted you aware of how things were going.
I'm sorry to ask you that.
No, it's okay. And I've also been a constituent of Senator Hartzell, because I was dean of River Falls for 2 years, and I transferred to Madison, so I do. Kristen, no, so she's older than she was. She was for a while wasn't in this area. She's like, so she switched to business. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. I know you guys are. All right.
Quite a crowd.
So got a
How are you?
Oh, great.
Mr. AG, congratulations.
Hey.
Sorry.
No problem.
All right, hopefully that doesn't fall.
Give it a little shake, and it'll all go down. You ready?
I'm ready. You guys
Good morning. Thank you for being here. We're all here today because there are people in this state who are living in fear that their abuser might someday find them. But the Wisconsin Department of Justice and the legislators and advocacy groups behind me believe that victims of abuse deserve to feel safe and secure in their own home, school, and workplace. Today, we're announcing that Safe at Home, Wisconsin's address confidentiality program, will be open for applications on April 1st. Safe at Home provides victims of domestic abuse, actual or threatened domestic abuse, child abuse, sexual abuse, stalking, and trafficking with a legal substitute address to be used for both public and private purposes. When a Safe at Home program participant's mail is sent to their assigned address, it will automatically be rerouted to Safe at Home. Safe at Home then forwards that program participant's mail to their actual address. Wisconsin is joining 35 other states in adopting an address confidentiality program, but unlike most other states, Wisconsin law requires both public and private entities to accept a program participant's assigned address. In the lead up to the launch of this program on April 1st, DOJ has been working with many of the organizations that will come across Safe at Home participants. They include school administrators, law enforcement have been provided notification and guides for what to expect when communicating with Safe at Home participants. DOJ has also worked with the Wisconsin court system, the Department of Transportation Division of Motor Vehicles, and the Wisconsin Elections Commission to ensure that every Safe at Home program participant is treated with privacy and confidentiality. We also have resources for private companies on our website. The website is www.safeathomewi.gov. This website will help to explain to those private entities what happens if they are confronted with a Safe at Home participant. I want to be sure to thank End Domestic Abuse Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Coalition Against Sexual Assault, Legal Action of Wisconsin, and the Wisconsin Women's Network. Providing this important public service and subsequent peace of mind to victims would not have been possible without the help of these groups. In addition to those here, there are also already nearly 60 advocates across the state who have been designated to assist participants in applying for the program. I would also like to thank the authors of this bipartisan legislation that created the Safe at Home program. If not for the bipartisan efforts from the legislators here, we would not be able to offer this level of security to victims of abuse. So with that, Thank you, and I'm going to turn the podium over to Senator Fitzgerald.
Thank you. In making sure that we're not exactly redundant, a lot of the comments that the Attorney General just made are, I think, going to be very similar to what everyone heard throughout the process. So I just wanted to thank Senator Schilling and Representative Taylor, Representative Clayfish for their hard work on this. I think one of the things that I was certainly moved by was when you heard some testimony that was given about specifically women in which they had been put in this very, very terrible and oftentimes frustrating position of trying to figure a way out of this mess. So I'm glad to be here today, and once again, very thankful we were able to accomplish this last session and get it through the legislative process. So thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Senator Schilling.
Thank you. Well, good morning. I first learned of the need for this program when I met with a constituent 2 years ago, and she shared with me her life story, a story of being involuntarily married at the age of 14, of being raped and abused. Luckily, she escaped, but she's been on the run ever since. She has moved 29 times. She has changed her name more than once and left behind careers and communities so that she would never be found. Every time her address would leak, through property purchase, through mail, through normal things that people do every day, she would have to pick up her family and move. When she arrived in Wisconsin, she realized that we did not have an address confidentiality program like the programs she had utilized in many other states to increase her safety. The Safe at Home program is not intended to make anyone feel 100% safe, but it is that added level of security it provides for absolutely necessary for survivors across the state who will utilize this program. While my constituent's story is unusual and it's extreme, sadly there are many other domestic abuse, sexual assault, stalking, and human trafficking survivors across the state who live in fear of their attackers finding them. This program will help them stay safe. I'd also like to commend the hard work of a few women who were able to join us here today. Jess Tiffany from PAVE in Beaver Dam and Kristen Berkey from DAYS in Madison were part of our Wisconsin Women's Network Policy Institute that gravitated towards this bill, that really embraced it as far as understanding the legislative process and lobbying on this and making it an important agenda item for them. With their fellow participants, they dug into this issue. They studied what other states did. They provided feedback on the bill, on the drafts. Then we reached out to legislators to get co-sponsors, and they were part of this every step of the way. And I truly believe that their Capitol visits, which for many of them was their first time visiting legislative offices, which can be sort of intimidating and mystifying, it is because of those 50 visits that we had 59 co-sponsors on this bill and a unanimous vote in both houses. So it is certainly a pleasure to work with everyone who is involved with the creation of this program. We certainly appreciate the hard work and the dedication through Attorney General Schimel's office as well. And while we don't always agree, we can say that there is one thing that we can all get behind. It is ensuring the safety of survivors. And just today I received an email from my constituent who said, and this is a fantastic way to close my remarks because I think there's nothing more that needs to be said after her comments, but she is beyond excited about the launch. She has been counting down the days and is thankful for the work and collaboration to make this a reality. Her family will enroll in the new future and looks forward to the increased safety and security that the program will add to their lives. So with that, I will turn it over to Representative Clayfish.
Thanks. Later. As the husband of a woman who has received multiple graphic death threats and been the subject of stalkers, I can tell you that there is a vulnerability that is foisted upon a victim in situations of stalking and threatening behavior. If we have the opportunity to give victims any tool to help give them peace of mind and return some bit of normalcy and some confidence that a future attack may not be around every corner, it's our obligation to do that. That's why today is a very exciting day, to empower victims with one small tool that may help give them the peace of mind to stay safer in the future. And that's why this is so exciting. Thanks.
Well, hello everybody. I'm State Representative Chris Taylor. Thank you for being here, and thank you to everybody who is here, all the advocates. I think what is really demonstrated with this bill is the importance of citizens being engaged, because it was the citizens that came together and these incredible activists who worked so hard on this bill. And a big thank you to all the legislators. It was really such an honor to work on such a very strong bipartisan way to get this bill passed. I first became aware of this issue when I heard from a constituent in my district who called my office, who was very desperate and very scared and wanted help with trying to maintain some confidentiality from her abuser. And I realized that we didn't have a way to help her. And so that led to me making some inquiries and working with these legislators behind me. And I'm just thrilled right now that this is coming to fruition now. Domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, stalking, it impacts people all over our state. It does not matter where you live. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. It doesn't matter if you're living in a rural community or an urban community. Here in Wisconsin, 48 people were victims of domestic violence homicide in 2015, and really over the last 16-year period. On average, one Wisconsinite has died from domestic violence every 8 days. So this is a very serious problem. I think from my perspective as a policymaker, the most important thing we do in this building is try to save people's lives through good policy, try to end human suffering through good policy. And that is what I'm very hopeful this law and this program is going to do for the people of the state of Wisconsin. So it's a very, very positive day today. And I think it's very important to get the word out now to individuals who need this program so desperately, that it is in effect and that they do have options and that we are listening. Thank you.
Excuse me. Good morning. It's nice to be with you all. My name is Chase Terrier. I'm the Public Policy Coordinator at End Domestic Abuse Wisconsin. End Abuse is the clearinghouse for domestic violence programs and shelters all across the state. On behalf of End Abuse, I want to thank Senators Fitzgerald and Schilling and Representatives Clayfish and Taylor for authoring this important legislation. I also want to thank the Department of Justice and Attorney General Brad Schimel, as well as all the other stakeholders that are represented here today, who assisted with the drafting of this bill. With the Safe at Home program in place, Wisconsin will join the majority of states in the U.S. that provide a mechanism for domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking survivors to obtain a confidential address to use in the place of their physical address. While most victims of domestic violence will never need to take this step, some survivors of very severe stalking, abuse, or harassment will never feel safe unless the individual who is threatening them is not allowed to know their whereabouts. At End Domestic Abuse Wisconsin, we have received numerous calls from survivors every year who have asked if they are able to obtain a confidential address in Wisconsin. Now we can finally provide them with the safety and the protection that they deserve. The stress and anxiety of not knowing if or when a person who has threatened your life will be outside your door has enormous consequences on a victim's health and their quality of life. Creating this system for confidential addresses will provide survivors in these very severe and high-risk cases peace of mind and an opportunity to live their lives free of an ever-present and looming threat. More importantly, the Safe at Home program will save lives. It really will, because it will limit dangerous individuals' opportunity to commit these acts of violence. So I want to once again extend my thank you to the authors for bringing this legislation forward. This is a critically important issue. We are thrilled to celebrate the rollout of this exciting program, and we really do look forward to its success in the future. Thank you so much.
Okay, we are there any questions you have of any of us relative to this? I'm glad that Senator Schilling and Representative Taylor talked about some of the personal stories from their constituents. They jogged a number of memories from my days in the DA's office of cases that would have been very good fits. One case that a woman was a victim of a home invasion sexual assault that ultimately it took a while back. This was back before we added all the new DNA analysts at the crime lab, and we waited a long time for the DNA results, and during that time she kept moving. When we did identify the offender, we had trouble finding her to let her know we found the offender and that she was safe and that we were going to proceed to trial. We're in much better shape with this legislation. It's thrilling when in Wisconsin when we do things that are for serious public safety and public health issues, like the HOPE legislation, and now this, where it's bipartisan and unanimous. This is fabulous to see Wisconsin work together like this.
I have a question on your
Yes. Well, let's finish this up, and some of us will be hanging around for the other things, but we'd like to really focus on this very important issue right here. Thank you.
Jimmy, do you know if we're going to sign up, or do you have a demand for this at this point?
This could be something that has a very big demand. I guess it depends on how well the word goes around, but there are many, many cases that we saw in the DA's office where a survivor of domestic violence came forward and was in legitimate fear for their safety, legitimate fear for the safety of their children, and could have benefited from this. So I think we may see quite a few people seek out this resource.
Will this be coordinated through victim witness people in the county, or how will someone obtain this?
The Office of Crime Victim Services here at DOJ is coordinating the program. We have the Safe at Home program will be housed within DOJ, and we have people that will be processing. They may have a very big job processing all of the mail that comes in, and making sure that confidentiality is maintained.
So who's going to be charged with helping the victims initiate their requests? And will that be the local prosecutors? How do they begin the process?
Domestic violence shelters, sexual abuse shelters, victim witness programs in DA's offices, yes, all of those things. Does that cover everybody for who's going to help victims with this?
Just advocates statewide.
Yeah, advocates statewide. There you go.
And
Public promotion campaign plan or anything like that done?
It's going to be advertised by those advocates who are working with survivors who are in fear already. So they will make them aware of this opportunity or this resource.
And that's your job,
is there any other mechanism that predators use to find their victims? I know you cited mail, but like something that comes to mind, like CCAT or something of that nature.
Oh, and we have to. Part of why we've communicated with the Department of Motor Vehicles so that they're prepared for this, so they don't release information. The Elections Commission, because that's going to make changes, and they need to be aware that they're going to have someone who's going to have an address that's not their real address, but they have to accommodate that person's right to vote. So, yes, there are a number of ways. I mean, in this internet age, it's very easy to find somebody if you log in and start looking for them. So the court information, all these places where we've got to go in and make sure that that address information is changed so you can't find them.
Are these going to be completely fake addresses, or are they going to be like somebody else's address where?
It's a great question. It's a completely fake address. Yeah. We're giving them your address.
Joel, you mentioned your wife's experience. Did you guys think of applying to this?
I don't think there's any way that we could keep our address confidential. We're both public figures. That's the life we chose to lead. We have to deal with the consequences of that. But it's been as recent as last month that police were investigating a potential threat against us. So it's kind of an ongoing thing, but it's par for the course and part of the territory, I would say.
Are there any limitations on it in terms of people who just want to be anonymous and can find some way to get on this program?
You've got to be a victim of an actual or threatened domestic abuse, child abuse, sexual assault, stalking, or trafficking incident. So it's got to fit in one of those things.
with charges filed? Or?
It wouldn't require that there are charges filed. It's just that you are, you've been identified as a survivor or victim of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, there's one question there. What's your question?
How long will it take from the time that they start an application to the time that they'll get the address? How long will it take?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. And we're going to endeavor to act very promptly on this, because when a person is facing this kind of danger, a threat that endangers their life or the life of someone that they're a parent or guardian of, we need to move quickly. We'll turn this around very fast. I just don't know in terms of hours, or is it going to take a day? There may be, the bigger challenge might be, depending on the volume that we're trying to process, is how quickly we're moving their mail from the fictional address to their actual address. That may be the one place where there's a gap, but getting them, I guess, off the grid, we're going to move very fast on that. It's a great question. Thank you.
Everyone. If you have more questions, the legislators of the Attorney General, we're going to let the advocates.
Oh, Bauer. Yeah, what's up?
So, Luther last night said,
Can you get in this photo?
I think probably. I talked to Luther this morning. Does that mean I simply still up in the air as to what that communication looks like, whether or not. And obviously they picked up on the idea. The governor's not going to sign anything into law that is against it. So, you know, I'm trying to work from the basis of let's continue to think outside of the box, see what we can come up with to keep some of those mega projects on track, as well as dealing with some of the outstate transportation needs as well. So,
is there any scenario where you could see the Senate passing a gas tax increase?
not right now. No, I don't think the votes are there. So, and I think, you know, I saw Senator Knotts kind of responded to what Senator Olson's comments were, and you know, I think that's fine. I mean, I think, you know, Luther probably, and he said so later on, that, you know, he was not trying to characterize a position, no matter how much kind of back and forth there was with the Secretary and the Finance Committee. He wasn't trying to characterize it that way. So
it's almost April, so what are these outside the box ideas? Give us some examples. You got to have some already in the contract.
Well, I don't want to announce anything that's outside of the box, because I haven't necessarily talked to everyone that, you know, we need to get all the information we should be gathering to come up with some of those concepts. But I mean, the one I've already talked about publicly was trying to deal with the mega projects kind of in a unique and different way than you do within the confines of a regular transportation budget. So if there's anything that we're thinking about, it's that. So
is the gas tax thing that the governor's saying, does that leave room open for fees, or is it meant to be all taxes?
You need to ask the governor that. Yeah.
But from your guys' perspective,
you need to ask the governor that.
Well, no. Are you guys saying at this point you don't have to vote for taxes?
If Scott Walker put out a statement today and said he's open to vehicle registration increases, then I think it would probably be something we would consider.
Why don't you do what you
but he's not doing that.
I mean, who cares what the government wants to do? You're a co-equal branch. Why you guys do what you want to do?
Because if you ask me to get support within a caucus for something that the governor is announcing that he's going to veto, it changes the dynamics of the caucus and whether or not you're able to get the support. You're just not going to get the support as long as the governor keeps saying these things.
Are you not counting on any Democrats supporting you in a veto override?
I'm not going to go. We're not going to override Governor Walker on a veto. We're not going to override it. You know, I think there were 1,900 vetoes on Governor Thompson. He was never overridden. It's just not part of the dynamic that exists for a Republican-controlled legislature to override Governor Walker. It's just not going to happen. Work with him up front, try and get some concessions or changes that make sense for us, and that's where we need to negotiate from. So, and talk with the speaker. Get the speaker in a position where we can bring the finance committee together on this stuff and the caucuses. I'm trying to make sure the caucuses are engaged and involved up front so that we don't have to go around and try and rally after the finance committee takes their final vote to get the votes to get a budget through.
But does your caucus open the right to carry Aaron Polskowski and Craig introduced?
I think we're 10 sponsors. And I think there's certain aspects of it that almost everybody feels, somewhat comfortable with because we've had concealed carry in place now for a number of years, and it's played out exactly like those of us that are advocates said. People are going, they're getting the training. They are paying $40, and the renewal rate is what we expected it to be. So there's a lot of aspects of what's currently going on that people have become more comfortable with. So the question becomes, how much further do you want to go beyond that? I don't know. It's not something that we've really talked about in caucus. So we'll definitely get there and have a better idea, I think, as we move forward.
So are you comfortable if I go out and buy a handgun, pass a background check, and don't get a permit that I should be able to carry concealed right now?
You?
Not you. But anybody can pass a background check. The idea of no training, no test, no class, get a gun, pass a background check, and go. Are you okay with that?
That's kind of, there's a difference between a legislator that was here and voted in favor of the ultimate package that became concealed carry. And actually, we didn't refer to it as concealed carry at that time. It was personal protection. So I think there's a dynamic there that exists that I really don't have a handle on yet as to where the mindset would be. But, I talked to the speaker about it a little bit today. He's kind of in the same place as I am. Just doesn't really have a handle because I was aware it was going to be rolled out, but since then, I haven't had a lot of give and take with the members yet.
Do you think your caucus is coming around on self-insurance, or how would you describe where they are on that at this point?
Coming around to support the governor's position? No, I thought the discussion in the finance committee was demonstrated that a lot of people have a lot of questions and they're very uncomfortable with it, which is where I anticipated we would be at this point. So I thought not only Republicans but Democrats asked a lot of good questions that puts it back in that category of I don't think the legislature is where the governor is right now, and especially if there's concessions ultimately from some of the health insurance, whether HMOs or corporations. There's some concessions apparently that can be made that might be able to make the system more efficient and keep the competition as part of what we have in Wisconsin. I think that's what, if there was any theme, it was probably that people kept coming back to the idea of, wait a minute, aren't we for competition? Aren't we for having a marketplace? And clearly this would shut that down. So I don't think the legislature is there right now.
The bill's calling for the Constitutional Convention passed committee this morning. Do you think your caucus will take that up anytime soon?
I would be surprised if many members of the caucus are really up to speed on just exactly what the implications are. And but I've talked not only to the author but other members that have been somewhat supportive. I think there's 7 or 8 states out there still that are considering it right now. So I've asked Senator Kapping to make the rounds and kind of talk to individual senators and kind of walk them through what the implications are. And then we'll see again whether or not there's momentum. You definitely need, you need everybody to be comfortable with it. So.
Are you?
It's interesting. I read a couple articles just as of late. I think as more legislatures kind of become more serious about it, and I still do have questions about the scope of what that constitutional convention might look like. There's a couple different wrinkles on the different resolutions depending on what states have taken out. I think there's about I think there's 24 states, 26 that have passed it already. 26. Yeah, only 26 have identical language, so I think there's some things out there that need to be nailed down yet. So, yep.
Where are you guys on the UW tuition cut?
We haven't really, beyond kind of the public discussion that we've had already, whether or not it makes sense. I don't know that the whole caucus is there. Much more focused right now on a discussion about the foundations and the relationship between, the 75 foundations that exist right now in Wisconsin. And we're cranking up the audit committee. We're going to take a look at that with the fallout from UW-Oshkosh and some of the other questions that have arisen now. This is a pretty big story, and I think it's going to continue to be a big story. So I got to be honest with you. It's kind of a sidebar, but talked to Senator Coles about it. I've talked to UW about it. If there's anything going on in the UW right now, it's these foundations and whether or not there needs to be more constraints and more accounting practices that absolutely have to be applied when you're talking about what's going on right now.
How does that play into the budget, though? That's not going to be done before the budget's finished, is it? The audit?
How does it play into the budget? It depends. If the UW system does not make an affirmative and aggressive attempt to clarify the interaction between the foundations and the UW and public institutions, the UW campuses, I just think it's going to be in the back of members' minds when you get to the UW's portion of the budget and they start talking about how much revenue is going to be in this budget for the system. It's just another thing that's looming out there. It's kind of it's a dark cloud that's out there that I know is going to be on members' minds when you ask them to support different aspects of the budget when it comes to the UW.
Does that mean no increase then for UW, or how does that mean?
No. I'm not going to put what that conclusion might look like, but certainly it's something that needs a lot of attention between now and the end of the budget. And the UW-Oshkosh situation seems to be escalating versus, kind of calming down. So I think there's a lot there that needs to be dug into, and that's kind of what the audit's going to do. But I think the UW needs to figure this out on their own as well.
And the key increase is performance-based funding.
I had no idea there were 75 foundations. No idea. But I thought every campus had one. 75.
Is that a bad thing on its face?
I don't want to do anything to damage them because I don't know what type of work they're doing for the campuses. But it just raises the question. There's 75 pots of money out there related to UW campuses, public institutions, and the one thing we do know is that there was interplay between taxpayer dollars and private dollars at UW-Oshkosh. And then, were they working outside of the building commission on some of this stuff? So there's a lot of big questions related to that story right now.
Lee has been pretty aggressive about traveling around, talking about running for Senate.
Yeah.
Nicole Schneider's name has popped up. Where are you at in that process of deciding if you're going to run?
Based on kind of everything we just talked about, I'm a little overwhelmed with kind of, what I've got on my plate right now here. But I just don't want to rule it out. I think it's interesting. Kind of the field seems to be expanding, and a lot of people are still considering it. So I think that's a good thing. And, my whole goal in this from day one was to, when I talked to Reince about it last fall, was we just need to make sure that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot by having a huge field and no one emerges as the candidate, and then we simply don't have the resources to make it through and make a real run at Senator Baldwin.
But if Schneider and Hovde are both possible self-funders, and you're tied up with the budget until, let's be generous, July 1, how do you raise the money to catch up with those guys for then a 14-month sprint to August of 18?
Yeah, I get it. You're never going to be able to raise as much money as somebody who's self-funding their own campaign, obviously. But, there's other things that, a person like Leah, like name ID, it's got to be significantly higher than what you may find. I would think mine would be too. Might not all be good, name ID, but I got some name ID, I'm sure. So there's certain things that I think just as a result of being an elected official and being in place for a while probably brings you on par. But no, it's, the timeline is tight, and, people would have to make up their mind, I'm assuming this summer, or certainly in the fall.
What would you say you're at? 50-50, 60-40, about a run?
I don't want to put a number.
All right.
Is Trump administration job still in the mix potentially? Or?
I don't know what's kind of going on there. I have not any contact kind of with in regards to what they're trying to work on as far as filling positions out in D.C. So I haven't had that discussion with anybody as of late. I've been out to D.C., but I haven't had discussions about that.
Has your interest level waned at all? Or?
It's just overwhelming to be here and be majority leader and continuing to work on these issues. So yeah, it's I'm fully engaged here, no doubt.
So it has waned a bit. Or you're saying yes? You just said
No,
yeah.
I didn't say that.
Yeah.
No, I didn't say yeah.
You said yeah. I got a table.
Okay. You got a tape of it. Anything else? Thanks.
How are the Brewers going to do this year?
Great. Brewers are going to do awesome. Yeah.
Thanks.